Tuesday? I had to think about that for a second. So happy Tuesday. Good to see you. If this is your first time in a webinar with me, I would love to hear about it. I want to know who's new. So tell me in the chat box. If this is your first time in a webinar with me, I would love to just say hi and meet you for the first time. Also, if you're able to turn on your cameras, I'd really appreciate that so I can actually see. As you can imagine, teaching to a bunch of dark screens doesn't give a lot of energy. So I'd much prefer to see your faces if possible. So, all right, let me just introduce myself real quick. I know what it's like to be in a webinar and think, who is this person? Why am I listening to her? So just to give a little background, and then we will jump into today's content. And real quick, before I introduce myself, if you would grab something to take notes with, you only remember 8% of what you hear, which is kind of depressing. But the good news is if you write it down, you can have 100%. You don't have to remember it then, right? So make sure you grab something to take notes with because we are going to do a lot of information today. So let me go ahead and introduce myself real quick. I see a lot of you that are new, so I'm really excited to meet with you. Thank you for being here today. My name is Anna Krueger. I've been a MAPS coach since 2015, and I have been in sales since 2006. 2013 is when I got into real estate sales. In my first year in real estate, I sold 85 houses. Never having been in real estate before. So the reason I'm sharing that with you is not to brag about 85 houses, but it's more to let you know that what I'm going to teach you today actually works. So how many of you would like to increase the amount of homes that you're selling? Anybody? I'm kind of guessing if you're here on a webinar on a Tuesday, you probably want to increase your success. So you are going to learn about how to do that today through the skills that I'm giving you. And what I will tell you is these things absolutely work. So we're going to talk today about how do you get people off the fence? How many of you are talking to people right now and you're hearing things like, can you just call me in a few months? I want to wait and see what's going to happen. Or in some version, however they're wording it, they are expressing to you, I don't have to move. It's more of a want to move. And so I'm just going to wait because the market's a little So we're going to talk today about how do you actually handle those situations. Real quick, I want to say when we're at the end, don't hop off. We're going to be done in 25 minutes from right now, no matter what. But at the end, I want to tell you where to find more information like this. And I have a giveaway. I'm even going to tell you what it is. How many of you like Boom headsets? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like the big headset. It's $275 if you buy it new. And it's a noise canceling headset. So it makes it that you can be in a loud room and you can't hear it, but the client can't hear it. So you can have a lot of chaos going on around you and it cancels out the noise. I used to lead generate in a room with 7 people and they could not hear. I would say, can you hear that? And I'd think surely they can. And they would say, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And we had music in the room and 7 agents. So that's the Boom headset, and that's why it's a really valuable resource, and I have a giveaway for it. So at the end of the webinar today, I'll tell you how to get the Boom headset, okay? All right, so let's talk about how to get people off the fence. So the first thing we're gonna do is talk about referees, because you actually kind of function like a referee, surprise. You know how in sports, you have high school referees, but then you have an NFL referee. And by the way, I'm not knocking high school referees, just to be clear. I have a bunch of them in my family. Okay, we have basketball coaches in my family, I should say. But there's a huge difference in pay between what a high school referee gets and what an NFL referee gets. Can we all just agree on that? It's a really big difference. And so what is the big difference between a high school referee and an NFL referee? So let's talk about that for just a minute, and then we're going to bring it back to how to get people off the fence. So what are some of the differences between those two things? And you can unmute yourself, by the way. I should have said that. I'm looking at the chat box. I see skill level. And what I should be more specific with my question, maybe. In what way is their skill different?
Experience.
Experience. What else? Like, what do they do in an NFL game when they're trying to decide on a call that they don't do in a high school game necessarily?
Review the plays.
Review the plays. Thank you. I wasn't wording my question very well, but that's what I was wanting us to think about. They review the plays. So thank you, whoever said that. And you know how they stop the game, and a lot of times on TV, they'll zoom in and they do the replay in slow motion multiple times sometimes. And there's this big debate about how are we going to call this? That's part of why they get paid so much money, because they're very good at, could we say, discretion. They're very good at making calls. We might not always agree with them, but that is essentially what a referee is paid for. They are paid to make calls. And the way that this relates to us in real estate is, I'm just going to do an example. I hear a lot of times leads say things like, I'm just going to wait. Can you call me in a few months? And a high school referee would say, sure, yeah, that's fine. I'll follow up with you. And then we hang up pretty quick. But an NFL referee would say, yeah, you know, definitely we can stay in touch. I'm curious though, what makes you want to move at all? Even though it might not be right now, what makes you want to move? And the point is they keep them engaged. They find out about their motivation, and essentially they look at that from all angles. They don't just hear, can you call me later? And then say, okay, I'll call you later. They take some time to dig in and look at it from multiple angles. Does that analogy make sense to everybody? And very much like a referee, when you function like a high school referee, you're going to get paid like a high school referee. When you function like an NFL referee, you're going to get paid like an NFL referee. So I want to teach you today, how do you look at stuff from all angles and figure out, is this someone that's really out of play? Or could they maybe stay in play? We just got to call it right. So the way that we're going to do this is we got to think of categories of people. So we have some people that have to move because of a job transfer, right? They have to. Or maybe somebody just passed away in their family and they have to sell the house that that person lived in. Those aren't really the people we're going to talk about today, because those are obvious plays. Those are people that they're going to move probably no matter what, even if they're a little nervous about the market, they're going to move because they have a really good reason to move. The kind of people that we're going to talk about today are the people who might want to move, but they don't really have to move. Can anybody think of a quick example? I'm not looking for a huge story just because of time, but more just like some quick examples maybe you can think of from your lead list where people have a situation they'd like to move, but they don't have to move. Anybody have an example like that?
Their lease isn't up yet, so they want to move in the future, but don't have to right now.
That's a really good one. And also they could keep renting, probably. If they're scared, I don't have to buy a house. You know, I could keep renting and just wait this out, right? What are some other scenarios that are pretty common for people where it's like they don't have to move, but they would like to?
If they just want to, like, you know, upgrade or downsize, but it's not like, you know, a really, really pressing issue for them.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that, Darylyn. And Frank and Daisy both kind of addressed that in the chat box. Maybe they've outgrown their home, or maybe they're empty nesters. And so the house just feels too big or too small. But I mean, it's manageable. It's not like I have to move. The house just feels empty, but I don't have to. I just kind of want to. Those are the kind of people that we have to get very good at figuring out what's the play. So I'm going to give you a method. Get ready to write really fast. Okay. Here's strategy number one. You're going to do what's called a pros and a cons list. So would someone volunteer to role play with me, and I'll be the agent, you'll be the client. And I just want you to be kind of on the fence and then just take notes on what you're hearing. Okay. So anything I say, write it down like a script. Steve, I see you. Thank you. So Steve, go ahead and unmute yourself. And let's say that we're on the phone. We've already said our hellos, and just express to me that you want to move. You don't really have to. And I'll walk you through what to do in that scenario with a pros and cons list. Go ahead.
Yeah, Anna, thanks for calling me. Yeah, I live in a small town outside of Minneapolis, and I've always wanted to go up and live in Minneapolis.
Okay.
But, you know, the market's so bad. And, you know, there's nothing pressing right now, but I mean, I would love to go out there just because there's more things to do at night, more restaurants. I think there's a little bit more activity for somebody my age.
Okay. Well, let's talk this through, Stephen, because I hear you saying that you want to move. You don't really have to move, but you see some benefits. Do you happen to have a pen and paper, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, great. On the left side of that page, I want you to write pros at the top. And on
Okay.
the right side of the page, I want you to write cons and then draw a line down the middle. And I'm going to do the same thing on my over here. And by
Okay.
the way, participants, pause real quick. I encourage you to do this also, because as you do it, it's going to help you remember what we're doing. So just pretend that you're taking notes right along with us. Okay. All right. So Stephen, I know you're kind of on the fence. Let's just talk through pros and cons. So what are some of the pros that you can think of when you think of moving? And I want you to write those down as we go.
Okay. So I'll be closer to my parents
Okay.
and my sister.
Okay.
There's
What-
also, restaurants, theater, the lakes.
Okay. Awesome. What else is a pro to moving?
There's a lot more dining here.
Okay.
We've got a great Irish pub here, but that, maybe once a month.
Okay. Got it. So great dining. So far I'm hearing you say closer to your parents, closer to your sister. There's great restaurants. There's a theater. The lakes are there. There's also a really great Irish pub that you love to go to. That would be a benefit to moving. What else, if anything, is a benefit to moving?
No, actually, here in town, we have the Irish pub. So
Okay.
there's not a lot of places to go.
Okay.
But just up in the cities, there's 4 million people up there, and I live in a town of 20,000.
Okay. Well, we're talking pros. So what other pros, if any, can you think of to moving?
That's pretty much it.
Okay. Pause real quick. And hang on, Stephen, I'll come right back to you. When you're doing this with people, you want them to write it down because you visually want them to see which side has more. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But also notice, what question did I keep asking over and over and over and over and over? Anybody notice?
What else?
What else?
The benefits.
Yeah, just what else? What else? What else? What else? What else? And there was even a long pause. Did any of you look at your screen like, uh-oh, did we get disconnected? And it's because Steve was thinking. So get comfortable with that. If you know you're a talker when there's long pauses, push mute on your phone so that you don't talk. I've had to do that before. So basically we just say, what else, what else, what else, what else, what else, until they say something like, I think that's it. Okay. So now back into this role play. So Stephen, I hear all of the pros that you just shared. What are some of the cons that make you think I don't want to move right now?
The market in Minneapolis, it's a lot more expensive.
Okay. What else?
Interest rates are higher.
Okay. What else is a concern to you?
I think one of the main things is that if you take where I live, cost me $3 to live there. Whereas in Minneapolis, to get the same place in the same type of neighborhood would cost me $6.
Okay. So would that fall under the category you mentioned earlier where the market is more expensive in Minneapolis?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So we have that the market's more expensive. $3 here would cost you $6 there. Basically, you're seeing it as twice as expensive. And then the interest rate. What else is holding you back, if anything, to making a move?
Here, I'm just writing that down.
Mm-hmm. And Steve,
I think the trouble, go ahead.
we have one more technique to teach. So I want to keep the role play. Is there anything else that's a con? And if you have more cons, tell me. But is there anything else that's a con that makes you want to not move?
I guess the trouble of finding a place.
Yes. Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, perfect. So pause role play for just a minute. What we have now are pros and cons. So if you were taking notes with us, you can visually see which side has more. Pros, right? Okay. Now that doesn't always mean that they'll move because there might be one con that is so big it outweighs everything. But that is part of the value of saying, do you have pen and paper? Let's write this down. Because I want him, he's on the fence, and I want him to visually see for himself which side has more weight, the pros or the cons. Now, one time I had someone who had 2 pros and like 6 cons. Well, in my head, I was like, well, this is a lost cause. And you know what? One of those pros was so big, it was taking care of elderly parents. They moved. So you just be careful not to judge. Be careful not to judge based off that. Okay. All right. And so back to the role play. And everybody listen, you're going to get the recording here. So write this down as good as you can and know you'll get a copy of this class today if you want to listen again. But what I'm hearing you say, Steve, is the pros are you would be closer to your parents. You'd be closer to your sister, better restaurants. You'd be close to the theater. You'd be closer to the lakes. And then the thing that's holding you back is it's going to cost more to live in Minneapolis. The interest rate concerns you, and it's just the trouble of moving. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let me ask you, can you ever get closer to your parents, sister, restaurants, theater, and lakes without going through the headache of accepting it's going to cost more? I'm going to have to find a place and move, which is a big headache. And interest rates. Can you ever get those things that you want without going through those 3 things?
No.
Okay, so what do you think you should do?
I should probably move.
Okay, well, let's see what we need to do to make that happen. And then we'll stop there real quick. Okay, now this is a 30-minute webinar. There's a lot that we would do after that. Steve, by the way, thank you. Give him a round of applause, everyone. I know we can't hear. You know how you clap in sign language is you go like this. That's how you clap in sign language. So you all look so happy. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Steve. But notice at the end, put this in your notes. Essentially, I recapped this. My marker ran out, so excuse, it looks a little chaotic, but I essentially recapped each point to him. I didn't say what he should do. I didn't explain any of this. Like in my head, I'm thinking the market is not expected to get better, at least where I live. Know your market. I'm also thinking interest rates are not going down. They're expected to go up by the end of the year. But I didn't take the time to explain all that right now because it would have distracted us from proceeding in the conversation. It doesn't matter me explaining any of this until he decides whether or not he wants to move. Right? So I got to keep it clean. I just need him to look at what are the pros, what are the cons, and what do I want to do? That's it. And so through working through this, at the end, you recap it. And the magic question is, can you ever get, write this down. Can you ever get, and then read all of this. So can you ever get closer to your parents, closer to your sister, restaurants, theater, and lakes? Can you ever get that stuff without accepting the fact it's going to be more expensive? You're going to have an interest rate, and it's honestly a big pain to move. Can you ever get the pros without those cons? And then just be quiet. It's not telling him what to do, it's asking. And in his case, he said no. And even with all my training, I was very tempted to say, well, then you should move, right? But I remembered it's got to be, well, Steve, what do you think you should do then? Because he needs to decide. He needs to decide what to do. Now, as soon as he said I should move, now my job is to come back and address these things. Okay, so great. Let's see what we need to do to make that happen. And then I would go through and say, talk to me a little bit more about why you want to be closer to your parents and your sister. Talk to me a little bit more about why is it so important to you that you're willing to move to be closer to restaurants and theater and all that stuff? Why is that so important to you? Because I'm going to want to understand his motivation at a deeper level. And then I'll say, okay, let's talk through some of these things. And then we would talk through the market. In this case, I would educate him Write this down in your notes. A lot of objections are simply a lack of education. Not always, but a lot of times they are. And he's right. The market isn't what it was before. But what he probably doesn't know is they're not expecting the market to improve from where it is today, at least where I live. Know your own market. So I got to educate him on that. And same thing with interest rates. You know, I mean, they're going to be higher than they were if he bought a house a couple years ago. This is probably more about a monthly payment than an interest rate. Truthfully, it's probably the case. And so we'll talk through that. And then the trouble of moving, maybe I can help get him connected with some movers or something like that. So these things all have explanations or solutions. But here's the thing I want you to remember. Put stars beside this in your notes. This is incredibly important. When their motivation is high enough, they will get into action. And how many of you can think of something in your own life right now today that you've been on the fence about and you've been putting it off, but deep down, you know that you really want or need to do it? Can any of you think of an example like that? Where if you just went to coffee with one of your best friends and you hashed it out, you would probably go ahead and get into action. But because no one's pushing you, no one's coaching you in that area, you're just kind of kicking it down the road. Anybody? This isn't like a life-changing thing, but I had a shed built last May in my backyard. And I live in South Carolina. Do you know how hot it is in May in South Carolina? So last year, like 14 months ago, I said, you know what, I'll do this in the fall. I'll organize this thing in the fall. The fall came. I'll do it in the winter. Like, it'd be nice to be out here in a coat so I'm not sweaty. Well, then that came and went. If we can all make sure we're muted, please. That came and went. And the point I'm making here is I kept kicking that down the road. And I finally just had to do it. You know what I did on July 4th is I organized my shed. What a lame way to spend July 4th. And it's also the hottest month in South Carolina. Now, if someone had sat down with me a few months ago and said, why do you want to organize your shed? Like, how is it helping you to wait to do that? I probably would have done it much, much sooner. But because there wasn't a deadline, it wasn't, I had to do it for a job transfer, going back to moving. There's not a pressure of a job transfer or a death in the family. Then there wasn't a reason to hurry up and get it done. And so what I'm saying to you is the conversation is what creates urgency for the people who are on the fence. So you just have to ask yourself, the next time someone is on the phone and they're like, oh, I'm just really not interested, can you call me later? Are you going to take a minute and be willing to engage them and say, well, what made you want to move in the first place? Let's make a pros and cons list. Because if you can create urgency through getting them to remember their motivation, that's how you're going to move people forward. Does this make sense to everyone? Perfect. Now, let me give you one more technique to get people off the fence. And this one is much faster. This one is one question, just one question. What is the benefit of waiting? If someone had said to me, Anna, what's the benefit of waiting to organize your shed? I would have had no answer, which would have helped me realize I should probably do it. So that's one other good question you can ask people. Just what's the benefit of waiting? And unless they have a very specific reason, you know, I'm having knee surgery, or I'm getting married, or there are some legitimate things that could cause people to need to wait. But a lot of things you hear are going to be a lack of education. Well, the market will be better. That's actually not true. I mean, it depends on your market, but I would guess for most of you, that's not the case. So that question again is, what's the benefit of waiting? So your two techniques are the pros and cons list, and you will get a recording of this webinar. So if you need to hear that again, or if you want to listen to it over and over and over, you can do that. We'll send it to you probably tomorrow. And then the second technique is just simply asking them, what is the benefit of waiting? I'm going to give you a third bonus one, and then we'll talk about how to get more things like this. The third bonus technique that I'll give you is asking them what would need to happen for you to move forward. If any of you are trying to decide, oh man, I'd love to take 2 weeks off work, I just don't feel like I can. Anybody ever think that to yourself? I'd love to take time off. Stephanie, I see you nodding your head. I would say just think for a minute, and you don't have to unmute, but Stephanie, if you wanted to take 2 weeks off work, what would need to happen to make that possible? And my guess would be some solutions just popped in your brain. Right? And the truth is, if you took time to think about that when we weren't in a webinar with distractions and people talking, you could probably come up with some pretty good solutions. So what would need to happen for you to move forward? That's another really good question you can ask people. And that can help. Now you're playing NFL referee, not high school referee. Okay? Because again, NFL referees are getting paid for their discretion in making a good judgment call. And when you just let people go, that's not being very discretionary. Okay. It's taking the play without looking at it from multiple angles. You got to remember, these people came into your world somehow, some way. So at some point they were interested in moving. Just talk about what that was. What was that? Okay. Now, do you think you could increase some business from what you learned today? Just a little bit. Okay. So I want you to know that 3 weeks from tomorrow, we have a 6-month program starting called Mega Lead Conversion. It's about the 15th time I've taught this class in the last 3 years. It is and I'm not saying this because I'm the teacher. The results we're getting from that class are incredible. I had one agent tell me that they were about 2 months into the program. And they said, I am seeing 10 additional people a month above what I was before this class. Another agent messaged me from South Africa. I thought that was cool. He said, before this class, I had no listings. And after a 1-hour session, I have 3 listings signed and I'm going on another one today. So those are the results coming from the class. The class can be found at megaleadconversion.com. Rodrigo, if you would throw that into the chat box for us. And the class starts in 3 weeks. It'll be on Wednesday, not Tuesday. So 3 weeks in a day. It'll be on Wednesday. It's a lot like this, except we have time to go more in depth. Okay, this was kind of rushed, but in that class, we go a lot more in depth. And I want to give you, we've actually never done this in all the years I've taught the class, but the Boom headset that I told you all about, I got my hands on one of those and I'm doing a giveaway. So if you're thinking to yourself, I already know I want to take that class, but you know, you're a procrastinator and you'll probably sign up August 1st to help make it easy on our side. We would love for you to register, not at the last second. So what we're doing is, if you register by tomorrow night at midnight Central Time, we're going to pick someone from that early registrants list and they're going to win that $275 Boom headset. So again, you're signing up for the class starting August 2nd, but as a thank you for doing that early for us to save us some chaos at the last second before that class starts, we're going to give you a Boom headset. Well, we're going to pick one person to win a Boom headset, but you do have to register by tomorrow night at midnight. So just a little incentive for you. You get a prize potentially, and it does make life a bit easier for us. It is not the same class as the Mega Listing Agent. To differentiate this class from that one, this class is all about all the way from hello, all the way through signed agency agreement. So if you have a lot of people that hang up on you, it's probably something in the call opener. We teach you how to open a call so they don't hang up on you. We teach you how do you dig into quality motivation, not, oh, I want to downsize. What's the deeper meaning behind that? Is it because you need to save money? Is it like, what is the thing that will keep you engaged? Because it's so meaningful to you. We teach things like, what do you do if they pick up the phone? And this cracks me up. They picked up the phone and then they're like, oh, I'm busy. Can you call me later? I always want to be like, no, you are not. You just picked up the phone. So how do you navigate that without being obnoxious and salesy, but keep them on the phone, right? There are techniques for these things. I just taught that, like, how do you keep them engaged when they say they're busy? And about 2 weeks ago, a client told me, I actually got a listing appointment off someone who started the call with, I'm busy, can you call me later? They got a listing appointment. So this will save you, or it will earn you more money. The class is $199 a month for 6 months. And I actually have something else for you. If you look at the chat box, there's the code WEB15. When you enter that, I'll give you 15% off each month. So what is that, like $185 a month, something like that? I'm doing math in my head. That's a little scary, but 15% off, whatever $199 is, 15% off that. But enter the code WEB15. And then you don't have to register by tomorrow at midnight. But if you already are thinking to yourself, I want to take this class, just go ahead and register by midnight tomorrow night, and we'll enter you for a drawing to win a free headset valued at $275. Wesley has a good question. I took your class, Mastering Inside Sales. Should I still take the class? So Wesley, it's very similar. We have updated it and tweaked some content based on the new market. So it's very, very similar to that class. And I would also just evaluate how well do you know the content. So like if someone stopped you in the hallway and said, hey, what are the 4 parts of a conversation? What are the 3 steps of the stall pattern? What are the 4 elements of leaving a voicemail that gets a call back? If you can just say that off the top of your head, then you're probably okay. If you can't, or you're thinking to yourself, I couldn't teach that class if I had to, it might be worth taking it again. We have a lot of people that take the class multiple times. So that's more of a judgment call on your part. I always look at it like, do I know this enough I could teach it? And if not, I should probably take it again. I've taken the Bold class multiple times, probably like many of you. Oh, good. Rodrigo put it, hey, it's a better deal than I thought. I said $185 a month. It's $169 a month when you use the code WEB15. But here's the bottom line. It's by the time you put all the months together, if you get 1 closing from the class, it's 8 times ROI on average. And honestly, if you only get 1 extra closing because of this class, I should be fired. Okay, like you will get far more than that. And Wesley, you took it. If you want to speak to that, you can. I'm putting you on the spot. You don't have to. But the class, I mean, 85 closings my first year, and I am not a natural salesperson. I just know the patterns. I'm not a natural salesperson. I'm a high school teacher that got into sales. So, and it's the patterns that work. It's a 6-month commitment, Daisy. Yep.
By far one of the best foundational classes. Absolutely.
Ah, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Here's the deal. I have a meeting. I'm going to just message them and saying I'm running a minute behind. Does anybody else have any other questions about the class?
They're asking if it's once per week, every 18 weeks.
Yeah, great question. So we meet 3 weeks a month, take a week off. 3 weeks, take a week off. And we do that so that the reality is you're going to go on vacation, you're going to have a conflict, and it allows you to not get really behind, and you can just watch a recording. And also it allows you to assimilate the information. You are going to drink from a fire hose. I try to pack every class full of very valuable information. And we found people remembered more by taking a week off every month. So we meet 3 weeks, take a week off. And it will meet, I'll go ahead and tell you, it's going to meet on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. 2 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays. It's an hour long. We record every session. And if you're on a team, you can have 2 people from your team attend for 1 registration. The class, for context, used to be $800 a month for 1 person. $800 a month for 1 person. And when COVID hit, we wanted to make it more accessible. So we restructured some things and we made it $199. $199 for 1 person is still a huge savings from what it was, but we're actually saying you can have 2 people. You just have to be within the same team. So $199 per person, or per registration, I should say. And so say you have 6 people on your team, that would be only 3 registrations. And then use that code WEB15 to get the price down a bit for you. Any other questions? I just messaged them and said, I'll be there in a minute. So I told my meeting, it's my operations assistant and they know that I'm doing this, so it's probably fine. But anybody else? Oh yes, Stephanie, your question. You are very observant. Yes, the week of Mega Camp, we moved class to Thursday instead of Wednesday because a lot of you will go to Mega Camp, but we didn't want you to miss a week of class. And also I need to be able to teach and I will be at Mega Camp. So there is 1 week, it'll be on a Thursday, but everything else will be on Wednesdays. And we'll announce it so you have plenty of notice. Okay, what I'm going to do is announce who is winning the Boom headset on Thursday. So you have up until tomorrow night at midnight Central Time to register. And if you have any other questions, I do need to hop off, but you can shoot me an email at mapscoachanna@gmail.com. I just put that in the chat box for you. But also go to megaleadconversion.com. I have a video where I explain how it works, and it's got a really good summary. So most questions are answered by just checking out the website. All right, call someone and do the pros and cons list. Will you all do that today? I'm sure you can think of at least one person in your CRM that's been on the fence, that if you called them and you did the pros and cons list, you could get them off the fence. So go do that today. Stephanie, that's so cool. I didn't know that. As someone who works from home, you get off Zoom and you're like, well, I hope I made a difference today, but I don't know. I miss the conversations after class. So Stephanie, thank you for telling me that. That means a lot to me. Yes, I recognize you. Awesome. All right, I will see you guys hopefully in class in 3 weeks and 1 day. Register tomorrow by midnight. See you later.